Don't say anything till you know what ground you're standing on.
We are Cape Cod Voices, a coalition of people of color and allies dedicated to advocating for Black, Indigenous, and people of color communities on Cape Cod. Today you will hear stories from the BIPOC community. You will hear stories about systemic racism, police brutality, marginalization, and oppression. You will hear stories about overt racism, implicit racism, crises of identity, and fear. When I first started planning this event, I had no idea how universal my own story was. Hearing and seeing other women and men of color tell their stories brought me solace. Our hope is that our brothers and sisters in the crowd can find solace too. We do not need to hide the truth. I see many allies in the crowd as well. And to our allies, I want to say, today you will hear firsthand what it's like to be a minority on Cape Cod. You may hear stories you cannot relate to. You may hear stories that you think you've heard before. But today is different. Today we want more than for you just to hear our stories. We want you to listen. Today we ask not just for your acknowledgement, but for your attention. Listen to our experiences and face the truth, because the first step towards change comes with listening. Thank you.
So what it's like to be, well, let me first just say, my name is Tamora Israel. I'm a poet, and I've lived on Cape for 14 years. What it's like to be a person of color on Cape. Unless you have family or a group of friends like I finally found, who look like you, it is extremely isolating and lonely. So I'm gonna read a poem later, so I'm gonna run through a couple of things that are hard to deal with. One, being followed through the store. That still happens to me all the time. I'm tired of having my intelligence met by surprise. I'm tired of people looking at me as though my Black is an offense to them. I'm tired of not being listened to. Thank you guys for putting this together, because this is so very important. Moving forward, please, when a person of color tells you how you made them feel, believe them. Listen to them. Now that we all understand that racism is a lie, now that we all know that systemic racism is holding us back, no one can claim ignorance anymore. We all know what's happening. So it's our job to do something about it. Every single day. I'm Black every day, so fight for me every single day. Talk to your people about what their racist words mean. Do it every single day. There's a poem that I wrote that I felt was important. So it's called Black is Beautiful. I'm slashing at the racist ideals with an ice pick. Get behind you and pump that figured out like a Heimlich. Take a step back, wanna kill this itch, I'm a hybrid. I had a half step, I stay killing that two-step. Take 2 steps back, I need my space. Take 2 steps back, hands up to be safe. 2 steps back and look at the painting. Perspective is priceless. Not every terrorist bangs with ISIS. Look at home for the answer, take a gander. Yeah, my brother was a hoodie, but he ain't no gangster. So keep your head up, little buck, don't let him shut you up. Speak truth to power. Blaze the world of darkness from the light within. And if you stop, and if you stand tall and dust that itch off, we are kings and queens. Our crowns are embedded in our melanin. Black lives matter is more than sentiment. For the little Black kids who are told that they're one of the good ones, who are told that they sound so educated or speak so well. All that's nonsense. I wrap it around my knuckles, tired of pulling punches in this perpetual struggle. The time to come up done came up. Enough is enough. Brothers and sisters, it is time to stand up, suit up, and run for office. I was taught how to be strong, how to be resilient, swing a sword to anyone who dares approach the queendom, step lightly and step with care. We can withstand stand any storm you could think of. But in the back of my mind, I'm always on notice. See, I gotta be aware of that angry black woman syndrome, because God forbid we speak our truth. For the little black kids with coarse hair, hard to pronounce names, and attitude and sass for days, know that you are smart, know that you are beautiful. And I don't care what anyone says, you are enough. Black is beautiful. Thank you for listening.
My name is Haley Johnson, and I use they, them pronouns, and I am a Mashpee Wampanoag tribal member. Growing up, I didn't know more than that. Representation of my people was limited to the romanticized Mayflower story and occasional field trip to Plymouth Plantation. At home, we had light conversation about identity, but other than that, the only cultural experiences I had were the yearly powwow and the clam bakes that my family catered throughout the summer. Every Independence Day weekend, my family would pack a bag and spend the day watching dancers compete and offer up prayers. We would make our way through the vendor tents, and when the sun was too unbearable near the arena, we would pick out small trinkets and items to remember that year of ceremony. The rest of the summer was spent with my family learning about traditional ways in which to prepare food, like clams, lobsters, things like that. Food that the Wampanoags have been eating for thousands of years. These events were the cornerstones of my understanding of what it was to be a native. I learned that family is important above all else. I learned that food can be the tie between someone and their ancestors, and that prayers aren't always said in a pew. Conversely, oral history did not hold as much weight. My grandfather spoke very little about his experience as a native man, and taught my mother very little about our people. Not knowing the history of the Mashpee Wampanoag is a direct consequence of hundreds of years of colonization. However, the gaps in my identity as a child and young adult are filling in as time goes on. Through language programs, socials, and educational opportunities now available for tribal members, my community continues to defy the belief that we are only history. And I am blessed with the opportunity to continue to learn and grow into my native identity. As an artist, I strive to be transparent in my work. That's the foundation for all my work, current and future. Right now, I'm in the midst of studying and creating a body of work revolving around food sovereignty amongst First Nations. This series highlights culturally significant foods and the ways in which food culture informs cultural practices across the board. This ongoing project also highlights the disparities of forcing Indigenous people onto food deserts and taking away their rights to cultural practices. I might have not had much access to my heritage as a child, but the work I do, the passion I have for it, I do because I believe that the stories and the lives of those who came before us are vital to who we are as a sovereign nation today. Our stories matter. Our history matters. The history of Black and Indigenous people in this country are the foundation for everything else. Thank you for being here today.
My name is Tiana Esperanza. I'm going to do a speech for you that I've written, as well as a song by Sam Cooke. I was born and raised here on Cape Cod. I love the natural environment and community of people here, but I long to see it more diverse and more accepting of that diversity. In order to get there, the system of racism that is in place across this nation and here on Cape Cod must change. This means that the institutions here, which control or influence access to housing, education, and healthcare, and those who work for them in positions of power, must change. And in order to do this, there must be first an awakening, then a looking inward, a defeating of one's own prejudices, and finally, acting and sacrificing for a better future, which includes our natural environment we all enjoy. While I am grateful for many of my educators and peers, I have experienced racism in every school I've ever been in Veritas Academy, in Sturgis Public Charter School, and in Barnstable High School, which still mocks Indigenous heritage with their mascot of Red Raiders. I am infuriated and sorrowful to say, too, that our housing situation has hardly changed since the time of openly lawful segregation. Within the counter-arguments of racism, there is always this question of justice and fairness. Life is not fair. True, but life does not have to be cruel. It is cruel that disproportionate levels of racial and wealth minorities die every day at the hands of a system that enjoys so much excess but claims does not have enough for all. Is this the environment you want to continue being comfortable living in? What if the tides changed and you were George Floyd under that knee? What would you say then if you could speak, if you were allowed to speak? In those moments, what would you want us to do? What would you hope the morality and ethicality of your society dictate? And when I say diversity, let me be clear. I wish for a future of diversity which innately wishes for a future of respect. Respect for the diversity of thought and actions I believe we are all entitled to. Do not bend me to your will, and I will not ask you to do the same. And when I say change, I don't mean to necessarily change you. This is tricky though, because it is a tried truth. It is a tried truth that what white men and women in positions of power think and do directly affects our lives. Those of us who are not so privileged to have their wealth or skin tone. And yet, I still believe diversity of thought and a safe community do not have to be mutually exclusive. You remain how you want, and I remain the same, but in positions with much less power over another. A position I believe no one truly deserves. Life is unfair, true. We don't always need to feel comfortable, but safety should be a given. I want to live in a society and in a community where the message is always, you deserve to be here and live your life fully, and no one should take that away from you, whether through direct or indirect means. Diversity is necessary if we are to broaden our minds beyond stagnance. Don't be afraid of new voices. I've learned there is always something more meaningful, more joyful, and more true on the other side of change. To those in power, your world is changing fast. Change is coming, whether you support it or not. We are getting closer every minute. I've warned you, this change will broaden your mind, challenge your perspective, and maybe ask you to sacrifice the privilege you have so dearly clung to. Hopefully, you will find more meaning, more joy, and more truth on the other side.
I was born by the river in a little tent, and oh, just like the river, I've been running ever since. It's been a long time coming, but I know change is gonna come. Oh, yes it will. It's been too hard for living, but I'm afraid to die, 'cause I don't know what's up there beyond the sky. It's been a long time coming, but I know a change is gonna come. Oh, yes it will. Then I go to the movies and I go downtown. Somebody keeps telling me, don't hang around. It's been a long time coming, but I know a change is gonna come. Oh, yes it will. Then I go to my brother. I say, brother, help me, please. But he winds up knocking me back down on my knees. Oh, there's been times that I thought I couldn't last for long. Now I know I am able to carry on. It's been a long time coming, and I know a change is gonna come. Oh, yes it will.
Today I will be telling a story that is not my own. My uncle, Dwayne Alves, was a black man, a huge supporter of the Black Lives Matter movement, and a survivor of brutality. In 2011, Dwayne Alves was DJing at a local restaurant here in Hyannis. A witness described the bar as being full of a lot of drunk guys inside, most of them cops. According to another witness, a drunk man started talking to and touching a woman inappropriately, and Dwayne Alves inserted himself between the two. According to witnesses, the man became irritated, even going so far as to say to his group of friends, "Makes me sick to see a white girl with a black guy." The man began getting aggressive with Dwayne, but was soon escorted out of the bar. However, inside the bar, tensions mounted. Witnesses stated that man then grabbed Dwayne by the neck and punched him in the face. One attacker held Dwayne's head between his legs in a bear lock, squeezing as hard as he could, as two others started punching and kicking him. While punching Dwayne, one man said, "Take that, Edward." As the assault continued, a cell phone fell to the ground. Thinking quickly, Dwayne grabbed the phone. The primary attacker began yelling, "My phone, that effing Edward has my phone." In Dwayne's own words, the cell phone was the only item I had to identify my attacker. The phone ended up in the possession of the Barnstable Police Department. Despite having the phone of one of his attackers, and the attacker being identified by multiple witnesses, his primary attacker's face was not included in the lineup. Dwayne's primary attacker was not reported as a suspect at the probable cause hearing. The fact that the attacker was not listed as a suspect at the hearing was held against Dwayne in court. Ultimately, 3 law enforcement officers, 1 a DEA agent, were charged but acquitted of this crime. The attack lasted at least 30 minutes. 30 minutes. Dwayne Alves' assault lasted 30 minutes. In a bar reportedly full of police. Dwayne said, "I felt like I was trapped by a bunch of cops. Who protects us from them?" I ask you, after hearing that story, does that sound fair? It doesn't to me. Those of us who knew Dwayne believe he didn't get justice. Malicious police and law enforcement officers remain protected in this country, by more than just police immunity. They are protected by a system that protects racism. A system that says it's okay to beat a black man. Unfortunately, Dwayne passed at the end of last year on his 51st birthday. At Dwayne's wake, we stood beside my family for hours as a sea of visitors paraded through to say their last goodbyes. 4 hours of constant handshaking. My uncle, Dwayne Alves, was a loved and respected man in the community. He touched many lives. Despite his PTSD and a system that constantly failed him, he never stopped fighting for justice. The system failed Dwayne, and I refuse to let it fail another person of color. To end, I'd like to read a quote Dwayne held dear to his heart. Martin Luther King said, "Never, never be afraid to do what's right, especially if the well-being of a person is at stake. Society's punishments are small compared to the wounds we inflict on our souls when we look the other way." Thank you.
While growing up, my black family would tell me stories of police violence towards people of color, circumstances where they were vulnerable because of their skin, assumptions people had about us, and places we had to be careful. The life of a white person on Cape Cod was and still is a completely different life than a black person. It wasn't only my family that made me aware of my skin color, but my friends, my school, my community constantly made me feel as if I was different. Growing up, my friends would often say, "Chandler is an N-word because of her dad, but she acts white. You're not annoying because you don't act black. Chandler, you're so pretty, you don't look black. You don't look black, you're pretty." Weekly comments on my skin tone and my black family were the butt of the joke for a lot of my white friends. I'll never forget in middle school when I was at a friend's house with 6 other children. The friend's mother, who was white, was calling a black man the N-word over and over again with complete disgust in her voice. I was so young and honestly could not understand the gravity of the word, but I knew each time she said it, I felt a stab to my chest. Well, now I'm older and I do understand the gravity of the word. This woman thought she was better than this man solely because of the color of his skin. This mentality throughout my life followed me, a mentality that a lot of other Cape Codders share, and we are here today to tell you that this is unacceptable. In high school, I had 4 Caucasian friends that would yell white power in the middle of history class. And though the teacher heard it, he would often stay silent. My friends would make slave jokes in history class as well. I remember one friend, while watching a video of an African American woman running away from her slave owner, pointed to me and said, "Look, there's you." I had a substitute teacher, in fact, once tell the whole class that black people had an extra bone in their body. How could such an ignorant and racist educator be allowed in our schools? Our teachers and our authority figures never talked to us about misguided hates or how to appropriately react to the information we were given in history class. These history classes, Black history was an afterthought taught by only white teachers. The current racial and inequality issues and racism that exist in our society today need to be learned, and they were never addressed in the classroom. Growing up on Cape Cod in a sea of people that didn't look like me, who made me feel ashamed of my brown skin, and who didn't understand my family's struggle, taught me what oppression is. I was utterly disappointed and heartbroken numerous times growing up from my friends, my school, and my community. I was made to say who I was as bad or not good enough. As a little girl, I wanted to make everyone happy, and I wanted to fit in, but the cost was feeling extreme pain. We as a community need to understand the real pain that comes with racism and how people of color are not safe, never listened to, or believed. On a daily basis, we are alienated, discriminated against, and belittled by our community. Thank you. At a Cape Cod protest in Hyannis I attended, there was a sentiment that our community is a good example of progress. We are no such example. There is a lot that needs to be done. We need a better life for our fellow brothers and sisters and our future children. We need people of color teaching in our schools, professionals who have studied Black history and systemic racism in our core education. We need structured spaces. We need structured spaces for young people of color where they can express themselves and their culture. There is so much more that needs to be done on Cape Cod to create equality, systemic racism in housing, political spheres, schools, and police force, and this change has been long overdue. Thank you.
Wow, she's awesome. She's really, really good. And it really touches my heart, Chandler. Thank you for sharing. And for Miranda, the story about Dwayne Alves, who I knew personally as well. Grew up with Dwayne all my life. His parents were my sister's godparents. Dwayne did a lot in this community, and to see the atrocities that he experienced here with police brutality and then without any closure or resolution to what happened to him. So I appreciate you girls, and I appreciate you putting this together. My name is Corey Green. I am a native Cape Codder. I am here to tell my story as a native Cape Codder. I am also part of the Cape Verdean Club in Falmouth, Massachusetts, and we stand with Black Lives Matter and this movement. So, as a native Cape Codder, born in Falmouth, lived in Mashpee from about 1975, and I'm a current Mashpee resident. I remember when I first moved to Mashpee, the native people were on every level. Town officials, police department, fire department, the selectmen. We had a principal. His name was Kenneth Coombs. He was a Wampanoag. And when I went to Mashpee, that's what it was, a lot of native people. In the years that I was in school, I don't think that there were more than a few teachers, if I can remember, any guidance counselors or people of color. And as the town of Mashpee grew, there were less and less of a presence of the natives in our government. And I would say that gentrification occurred quite rapidly. And by the time I had children, the town was a majority of white, including the school system. Having raised my children in Mashpee, it was still the same. And few, if any, people of color that were teachers, coaches, guidance counselors, etc. And watching my kids be one or two in a class size of 28 to 30 kids, they'd be the only person of color. I recall when my son was 14 years old in an incident that occurred that really put the official stamp of what fear I had that would happen. That my son would become a statistic of racial profiling. He was at the 99 restaurant with several friends that were both of color and native, and they were asked to leave the restaurant because there was an argument with somebody in the staff. So when they were asked to leave, the police were called, and one of his friends was talking to the police, and my son wanted to try to let the police know that the kid they were talking to really wasn't involved in the argument. He was told to stand back, and I relived this story with my son before I wrote this, because I remember. He was told to stand back by the police officer. He wanted him to go on the other side of the parking lot. And when he didn't move far enough away, he was grabbed by the police officer, his arm was twisted, and he was slammed on the hood of the police car. And they kept yelling at him to stop resisting. He was 14 years old. My son was, and still is, he's an athlete, he was a scholar, he was well known in the community. He was well known, and he was treated this way by our own police officers. I received a call from somebody in the parking lot to say that my son was being handled aggressively, and that she was yelling at the police officer that he was a good kid. Officer, he's a good kid. So by the time I got to the Mashpee police station, I was as heated could be. Because this was my community, this was my town, and they were going to treat my son in no such way. So when I got to the police station, and my son's sitting there shivering, a little scared of what just happened to him, I asked for the chief on call, or whoever the detective was, to come out, the supervisor. And I had to say to my son, do you know why you're here? Do you know why they've treated you as such? It's because the color of your skin, the texture of your hair, and the way that you look, that these police officer treated you as such. And that was at a 14-year-old age in Mashpee. So to say that racism doesn't exist in this area is just not true. To tell that story, it just makes me remember that when I raised a young black man in this country at this time, to be fearful that he would be a statistic of how he was treated or arrested injustly. So I always try to tell him, if something goes down, go the other way. Let your white friends handle their business, but you go the other way, because I don't want him to be a victim of brutality or one of those members that were calling out his name. So I stand here today and I say, please take this time to understand the injustice, the inequalities, and the systemic racism that is within our very own town and communities, and take a stand to be part of the solution and not the problem.
I'm going to be telling a story of someone who would like to remain anonymous due to the fear of backlash from telling their story publicly. I am a black Cape Verdean man in my 50s, and I grew up in Falmouth on Cape Cod. In my experience, according to most of the white people I grew up with on the Cape, I am one of them, not one of us. I am a person that is less than, not equal to, or I am the exception to the rule, even to those that call me and or my friends and family. When I was 10 years old in 1976, I watched TV confused. I saw white grown-ups throwing bottles at black children as they walked into school, calling them the N-word. It was forced busing in Massachusetts, later to be known as the METCO program. I always knew who I was in my culture as a black Cape Verdean man, even at this age. What I didn't realize and saw my first example of is that there are white people that consider black people less than, not worthy, not one of us, to the point that adults would ridicule and try to harm innocent children. While this scared me as a child, I did not internalize it because it was not me, and it was far away. I remember when I first realized that my white brethren considered me one of them. I was approximately 11 or 12 in 8th grade. Falmouth is a big hockey town, and I did not play. My friend made the joke, "You know why you guys can't play hockey, right?" Then he delivered the punchline, "Because you guys have weak ankles." And he laughed. I did not understand the joke. I was confused. I said, "I don't get it. Who has weak ankles?" He said, "You know, you guys, black guys." It was at the time that I realized that while I saw all of us as individuals, my white friends did not see me that way. It suddenly all became clear to me how I was misinterpreted my life experiences up until then. In high school, I had 2 white teachers that were married and taught at Falmouth High School. I was good friends with their son. As a freshman one day, he told me that he overheard his parents talking about me at home. They were amazed at my intelligence and drive, and he found it funny that they would say, "He's not like the rest of them, he might actually amount to something." By senior years, my grades had slipped as I began to party and hang out with a different crowd. He then came back to me, finding it funny that now he had overheard his parents talking about me once again. This time, however, they were saying, "He's no different from the rest of them. He will never amount to anything." Too bad, he had promise. From ages 20 to 40, I had often had white friends tell black jokes or use the N-word. When I objected, they often replied, "Well, you're not really black. And otherwise, I am the exception to the rule, the exception to them, the less than, the not worthy." The main reason for this, which they do not realize, is that they know me. They have to come judge me as an individual by the content of my character, yet it never occurs to them that they prejudge the them that they do not know. More recently, I have been pulled over for driving while black on the Cape. When I am pulled over, I am usually questioned indirectly as to how I can afford my car, as if I may have stolen it, or perhaps I am a drug dealer. The officer would often ask questions like, "What do you do for work?" One time the officer asked, "This is a Maserati?" I responded, "Yes." He responded, "A Maserati?" Even though it says Maserati on the back of the car. These questions are not simply inquisitive. The tone of the question is always clear. What is one of them doing driving a car like this? They often ask, "Do you mind if I search your car? Or could you pop the trunk?" A few times they even went as far as to ask me, "Now if I were to search you, would I find any drugs?" Of course, they always ask for my license and registration. I am always let go without incident. Racism as defined as a belief that race is the primary determinant of human traits and capacities, and that racial differences produce an inherent superiority of a particular race. So, dear white people of the Cape, if you cannot see yourself dating or marrying a person of color or never have, if you would refuse to let your sons or your daughters bring a person of color home as a boyfriend or girlfriend, if the black people you know are the exception to your perception of black people, if you see a person of color that seems to have more than you and presume he or she must have obtained it by nefarious means, if you see race as a them and us, then you are racist. You must be honest with yourself. You cannot heal from a problem that you do not acknowledge. We are all human beings. We are all in this together. There is only us. Thank you.
Hello, my name's Zion. Thanks for all being here at this event. I hope this is the first of many. I grew up here on Cape Cod. I live in Chicago now, but my friends Miranda and Chandler told me they were doing this and they want me to come, so I couldn't say no. Had to do it. I've been my best friends for over 10 years, so thank you. So, and I hope I'm here today, which I hope with many people are here to learn as well as to share my experience. But I just want to say before I start, I hope we're all here, you know, out of love, really, and for learning, for better understanding, and we're all people. And I want to, thank you. So, I guess I just wanted to jump right in. I haven't done any public speaking since my junior year, so bear with me. All right. Thank you. So I just want to say, like, what you start to learn about your own life through the stories of others is pretty amazing. Just for myself, by the time I was 15 or 16, I had already had many experiences with racism and bigotry and, you know, microaggressions, a word that wasn't in my vocabulary till, you know, that wasn't in my vocabulary the first half of my life, so. And really what that does, you feel very alone in that. You go through life feeling like there's something wrong with you or happening to you, but once, you know, at events like this today and just through talking to people and you start to hear the stories of others, you realize it's not a rare or isolated event that just happens to you, but rather learned racist behaviors that are perpetuated by society at large. So my goal and our goal, I hope, is to have people realize that we're all here because what we have to say about racism is a real lived experience and a current reality for all of us. I do get discouraged sometimes because I know there are still many who are dedicated to only misunderstanding me to uphold the status quo, but that's okay. That's not going to stop me today. So, you know, I know we have so many stories. I have a lot of stories, and I'm not going to go into all of them, but I guess I'll just give a few examples. Just being a biracial person, and I'm perceived as a black man by society, and I can say I don't think I've ever met another black man who's never had the experience of, you know, walking on the street and having someone grab their purse and cower away from them. That happened to me on Main Street in Falmouth at Steve's Pizza, and I was 9 years old. You know, things like that. Or I was at Old Silver Beach in the parking lot, and a man accused me of trying to steal his boat, and I was 6. You know, and at the time, you don't know that these are racially motivated events, but you know, you get older and you hear other people's stories and experience, you realize that's what it is. And it might seem to be hard to grasp because, you know, how does a 6-year-old steal a boat? And just to put it as simply as I can, there are so many unseen, annoying, and accusatory little things that we all go through that I feel a lot of people don't fully realize or appreciate because it hasn't been their experience. And, you know, it's harder for us to be believed when we speak out about these things. So, again, I'm really happy that we're all here today for this. This is amazing. But it's just something that, you know, I live with every day, and, you know, it gets to be exhausting. Like, another example, I remember being in 5th grade, trying to work on a project with my friends. I was going to go to his house to work on it. My friend's parents heard my name. They looked at my picture in the yearbook, saw what I looked like, and said I couldn't come over. I was just told I can't come. And I didn't know why, but, you know, now I do know. And, you know, each story on its own might seem small and insignificant, but I suppose that's the point. It's just, I really want to reiterate that it's what I and what many of us live with every day. It's just our lives. And so much of our lives are defined by the racism of others that is entrenched into who we are and who we are into who we are. And it's perpetuated by a society that doesn't seem ready to reckon with it and try to fix it. And added up together, it's just this extra added layer of, you know, hardship that we all have to go through and experience. So thank you so much. I hope that makes it a little clearer. I have a song I want to sing, which I'm much better at doing. So if you bear with me, I'll set that up. And this song's called The Ground You're Standing On. Alright, I guess this mic's just not going to work, but whatever, let's do it. I've never seen anything quite like this. This is not the land I remember. I'm just wondering on the other side of the screen. Where you've been, what's the rent like living under a rock? I'm out of time, but I'll give you a minute to find anything else to say before you decide to speak your mind. Don't you dare say this is not who we are. Don't you say this time I think we've gone too far. Don't say anything till you know what ground you're standing on. Standing on. You're all the same. 40-mile-per-hour drivers in the left lane, in the way of those of us who can't afford to wait. 'Cause there's no time to be nice, to be polite or civilized. With a knife up against my neck, I can't agree to disagree when someone else's beliefs are at odds with me for existing. Hating them makes me the hate that I claim to be. Then I say, oh, my head is in its right place. Don't you dare say this is not who we are. Don't you say this time I think we've gone too far. Don't say anything till you know what ground you're standing on. You're standing on. I hope one day I'm a footnote on a dusty page, and historians can see I was on the right side. I hope one day I'm a footnote on a dusty page. It could be this song so everyone will know what side I was on. I hope one day I'm a footnote on a dusty page. It won't say one damn thing about how side I was. I hope that came through nicely, but thank you.
Now I'm back to tell my own story. My name is Carlina Corey, and I grew up in Falmouth, and I went to Falmouth Public School until junior high, and I graduated from Sturgis, right down the street from here. Besides the years that I went to college, I've lived here on the Cape, and I want to start with a story from the time that I spent at Bridgewater State University. I was at a party, and I was talking to a group of people, and a white male in the group was talking about how diverse BSU was, which for the record it's not, compared to his high school where there were maybe 4 black kids. He then proceeded to tell me, I don't know how to talk to people like you. People like me, I said. He said, yeah, black people, like how do I talk to you? I told him to talk to us like you would talk to any other human being. This is what happens when you grow up in a place with no diversity, in a white dominant culture, with a white dominant media. And it oddly reminded me of home, of Cape Cod. Cape Cod is about 92% white, and I barely met anyone who looked like me growing up besides my own family. I didn't have a black teacher until junior high, and then I didn't again until my senior year of college. I too remember ignorantly feeling like Bridgewater State was so diverse because I was not used to seeing so many different races on a daily basis. So, when I think deeper about this kid's statement, that he doesn't know how to talk to people like me, I think of all the people I grew up around, and maybe they feel the same way. Maybe some of you listening right now feel the same way. I want you, and I need you to, unlearn that dominant way of thinking. I need you to listen to us when we speak about the issues we are facing, personally and as a community. Don't say that you're colorblind, or you don't see color. See us. Acknowledge us, learn us, all of us. And with that, I do want to acknowledge that I'm only half black, I'm light-skinned. I don't face racism as badly as those who are darker than me. Growing up here, I would just get the typical, you're an Oreo comment, which if you don't know it, it means you're black on the outside, but white on the inside, like an Oreo cookie. I'm what you call a palatable black person, which I'll explain in my next story, which is actually partially my dad's. After George Floyd was murdered, he got a text from his white friend saying, sad, what happened to George Floyd? Thoughts and prayers to the family. My dad told me he'd said that and said, why would he text me that? And it dawned on me, like a lot of the rest of the country, recently, that he, as a white person, was opening his eyes to the injustices that the black community have been facing ever since they were forced into this country. He noticed for the first time that his friend Rob was black, and that could have happened to him. It almost has happened to him, by the way. I told my dad that he was a palatable black person, The kind of black that white people will say, well, you don't act black. What they mean is that they're not the stereotypical black person. Well, there's no right or wrong way to be black. We are all worthy of friendship and love. We are all worthy of being alive. This is the danger of not acknowledging us. How can you see our struggle if you don't see us? And this is exactly why when Breonna Taylor was murdered, everyone kept mentioning her occupation as an EMT. Why does this matter? Because black people need to be palatable to appeal to white people, as if we're being marketed to be worthy of attention by what we have to offer, and not just by the simple fact that we're human too? We as a society need to unlearn that. Because if we don't, we'll have the white vigilantes, otherwise known as the Karens, who will continue to call the police on black people for no reason and socially police black people in public spaces. The type of white people like George Zimmerman who took Trayvon Martin from this earth for just walking home. A lot of white folks are now just opening their eyes and paying attention to the black community, but I've been here. We've been here. And if you're not here today to realize your complacency within white supremacy and your consumption of white privilege, then you showed up at the wrong event today.
My name is Fatima. Hi, I'm actually 16, and standing up here in front of you is actually a little bit intimidating, so if I take like a really long pause, I'm just freaking out, but don't worry. I attend Sturgis Charter School down the street right now, but throughout elementary school and middle school, I went to Warren Public Schools, and like most schools on Cape, the schools weren't winning any prizes in diversity or anything. So I have this story from this one time I was in 7th grade, and I was sitting in a class similar to homeroom. Everyone was mostly quiet doing work, but the teacher had left the room, so a boy came in. He had been wandering around the hallway, I guess. He came in and he decided to sing this song called Black People Song. I don't recommend entertaining things like this, but if you look the song up on the internet, you'll probably find similar songs. The Mexican People Song, I think there's a Chinese one, it's ridiculous. They're full of racist stereotypes and things like that. The boy sings a song in the classroom. Doesn't really make eye contact with anyone, just kind of sings it and leaves the room and goes on. But after the room is completely silent and everyone is either looking directly at me or trying to look anywhere but at me. And of course, I'm the only black person in the class. So it was probably one of the most humiliating things I've experienced in my short 16 years, but it was incredibly embarrassing, and I didn't really know what to do about it or if there was something I should have done about it. Eventually, I ended up going to the vice principal about the situation, and I remember him being pretty nonchalant about the whole thing. I think he actually pulled the song up and kind of laughed it off and tried to get me to laugh it off by minimizing the situation. When I look back on it now, I don't think he really cared at all how I felt about the situation or anything, but my mom saw that nothing was happening, so she was very, very upset, and she decided she wanted to bring the case with it, which was maybe a little bit extreme, but that's when the vice principal really started to care, because the white kid that was also involved in the situation was at stake of being punished or harmed in some way. More than anything, I think I wanted the school to acknowledge what had been done, what had been done was wrong, and that tell the boy that it was wrong so he could know it's not okay, and so other people could know it's not okay as well. I don't know what disciplinary action could have been taken, but I just really wanted the school to say they wouldn't tolerate racism the way they say they won't tolerate bullying, at least, because Born has this whole thing of born to be kind, born to stand up to bullying. It's actually kind of ironic considering how many people get bullied in that school. Like, you might know that if you've ever attended. But the boy did end up writing me an apology note, which I think I kind of skimmed at the time. I was obviously still upset the school hadn't taken the situation seriously. But I recently communicated with him a couple weeks ago. I reached out and I learned some things that the school had never explained to him why it was wrong. His parents had been the ones to explain to him why what he did was wrong, which is why he wrote the note. And that's, of course, a good thing, but it kind of confirmed my suspicion that the school hadn't done anything. He apologized again, which I believe was genuine, probably matured from it. He said that he recognizes that what he did was racist, and he realizes that things in the song are racist stereotypes that are not true. That he doesn't believe to be true. And he told me that he still thinks about the incident, which was interesting, of course, because I've thought about it several times over the last couple years. It might not seem like something huge, but to 12-year-old me, it was very humiliating, embarrassing, and isolating. And him and I both agree that the school could have done more about what happened, especially to understand why what he did was wrong, and helped him to be more informed on racism. That's all.
Before we end here today, I just want to ask all of you to remember some of Cape Cod's lesser discussed history. We currently stand on land stolen from the Wampanoag tribe. In 1614, Wampanoag men were kidnapped by Europeans who planned to sell them as slaves. In 1848, Harwich hosted an anti-slavery convention. This convention was stormed by 2,000 Cape Cod residents who ran abolitionists out of town. In 1945, Cape Verdean immigrant and activist Eugenia Forts stood her ground when asked by police to leave the segregated East Beach here in Hyannis. In 1962, reverse freedom rides conned poor black families into heading north with the promise of a better life, only to abandon them. 100 of them, the largest number sent anywhere, were bused right here to Hyannis. Cape Cod has a history of racism, and that history stands as the foundation for the Cape Cod we see today. While we have seen progress, we need to remain headed in the right direction. We now must look to the present. We must pull aside Cape Cod's white-faced veneer and elevate those who have been marginalized, underserved, and underrepresented. There are concrete actions we can take and must take in our everyday life. We have to vote. In the upcoming county commissioner election, 2 seats will be up for election. Currently, 1 seat is occupied by a man who believes white privilege doesn't exist. Both positions can be filled by candidates that support people of color. We can build our communities by advocating for more balanced housing, regulation, and investing more heavily in Cape Cod's infrastructure. We need to reanalyze our policing. People should not have to wonder if their police are there to serve. We must hold those who wield power accountable. We must make Cape Cod a welcoming, comfortable place for everyone. That means fighting racism and correcting systemic disproportionalities. It is not an easy undertaking to dismantle hundreds of years of oppression, but it is our only option. Thank you.
Say a goddamn thing till you know what ground you're standing on. You're standing on. One day I'm a footnote on a dusty page. The was on the right side. I hope one day I'm a footnote on a dusty page. It could be this song, so everyone can know what side I was on. I hope